Hey everybody, happy Friday. So we're back in Open Studio, and today the sun's out. I'm very excited about this. Although interestingly enough, it actually impacts my visibility on what I'm stitching, because I'm stitching a really dark green. It's kind of like a forest green right now, and it's, I've got a needle in it, so I can't pull it out. But it's this dark forest green, and this, with the sunlight, it's actually making it, and the thread matches, so it's making it a little bit harder to see, which usually I only run into when I'm stitching black on black, which is just, I don't care how good your eyes are, stitching black on black is just not easy. And as you get older and you gotta wear cheaters, it becomes more complicated. So anyway, the forest green is giving me a similar issue today, but it's a little better than black on black. So anyway, today I figure we'll do, like our usual, we'll do some stitching, I'll do some talking, and I'll try to keep an eye out for anyone who might wave or comment or say hello as you come by or as you're scrolling past. And if you have your sound on as you're scrolling through Facebook, and if I see your name and I say it, you'll hear it. So cool, exciting, huh? So I want to talk a little bit about structures and systems and why I believe they're important for creativity. It can seem sort of contradictory, I think, sometimes when we think about it, right? Because we think creativity and we think freedom and freedom of expression and go with the flow, and sorry, I've got thread on my nose. Go with the flow, no restrictions, free, again, freedom, whatnot. And so putting systems and structure and that sort of thing in place when you're looking to do something a little bit more creative, whether it's something like this, whether it's drawing, whether it's planning out your route for your mountain bike trip, whatever it might be, it's putting a little bit of structure in place actually can help you and free you to be more creative. And the reason I say this is because this happens to work for me. And there are plenty of other people out there who don't need that structure, don't need that sort of routine. However, if you're trying to insert creativity into what is already a very busy life or a busy day, then that structure and routine is absolutely a necessity if you want to be able to do something, that sparks that creative fire in you and allows you to kind of let your inner child come out and play again. Because I've talked about that in the past, right? In the two prior Facebook Lives and Open Studios, and I will continue to talk about this going forward, but that creativity is our greatest gift, and it's something that I think just gets programmed out of us as we get older. We're told to go off into the real world. I'm going to start sewing and talk at the same time. We go out into the real world, and we're told, it's time to put the crayons away. It's time to stop, doing these silly, playful things because, we have to be adults and we have to grow up and we have to be responsible and pay the bills and show up at work on time and all that. And all of that is great. Of course we're supposed to, of course we need to do these things, right? Because we can't stay children forever. However, I firmly believe that the little child that's inside you never leaves. We carry it with us as we get older. And when you start feeling anxious or like something's missing or like you don't fit in, or it just like you're unhappy, you're dissatisfied, you're sitting at work and you're like, this isn't it, there must be something more, or you come home at night and watching TV is just not what you want to do anymore, but you don't know what else to do to occupy your time, and reading a book doesn't cut it, and drinking a beer with your partner doesn't cut it, and just something isn't, it's just something's missing. I firmly believe that is your inner child saying, hey, I want to come out and play again. Can we please do something fun? Can we please do something creative? And the vast majority of us, for most of our adult lives, ignore that voice. And then we wonder why we continue to be dissatisfied and unhappy and discontent. So, and this kind of thing can actually, it can ruin relationships. It can cause you to quit a job because you think it's the job, and you go take another one and discover that nope, this one's not really much better, all that much better either. So how do you do this? How do you listen to that inner child within inside you and allow him or her out to play when you're already busy, when you're already working a full-time job, for those of you who are still fortunate enough to have one. For those who've lost one in the middle of this pandemic, I feel for you. It's no fun to not have income. And it adds so much unwanted and unneeded stress. But anyway, if you are fortunate enough to have a full-time job and you come home at the end of your day and you've got a house to take care of, maybe you have children, maybe you have a partner at home, in pre-pandemic times, maybe you had soccer practice and you had book club and you had familial obligations with your aging parents and all of these sorts of things. And so everything you do seems to be for somebody else or for the purposes of your home or purposes of your job. And you can kind of start to feel like there's absolutely nothing for you, right? And I know that's how I felt for a long time, that while I didn't resent, coming home, cooking dinner and doing those sorts of things, I did find myself just wondering when it was my turn to do something that I wanted to do. And creativity answered that question for me. But when you're buried under all the mountains of things that you're required to do, it's really hard to find the time to do something that allows that inner child out to play. It blocks you from that creative time. So putting systems and structures in place is really critical to making that happen. And I use a variety of things. I've got a little bit of OCD, which I've talked about here, I think, at least once. I've stitched myself into a corner. So now I shift myself around and replant my thread and find a new place to go, find a new hole. Anyway, like I said, I've got a little bit of OCD, so I do like structure and routine. It's really rather important to me. But what I found when I first decided that I was going to take up the sewing again with fabric and thread to try to make art quilts and textured fiber paintings and whatnot, I realized that I had to really kind of put it on my calendar. And so I started off, because initially I was doing this all very willy-nilly. Like I'd come home at work and I'm like, from work at the end of the day, determined to, I'm going to spend some time sewing today. I'm going to spend some time playing with fabric today. I'm going to spend some time working with color today. And then I get home and it's like, oh, I'm tired, or it's dinner time, or when my stepsons were younger and still at home, oh, we've got a hockey game tonight. And so I found myself really desperately wanting to do something creative, but still not doing it because I was just sort of trying to, I'll just squeeze it in. Well, what I did is to shift that and change that, I decided that, I could take a page out of my job book, or the things I did for my job, and schedule it on my calendar like it was a meeting, so that it became sacred time for me. And so I did that, and I had to, it didn't mean that occasionally I didn't skip a session, because again, sometimes life happens, life gets in the way, and maybe I was at work and I was still working corporate in the aviation construction management industry, and sometimes every once in a blue moon you got a day that takes you, you're still there well past your normal quitting time. And so, I allowed for that sort of flexibility, but what I did is I scheduled it on my calendar, and then I told my partner, I told Rocco, and I told the boys when they were still at home, that this was something I was going to do. And while I didn't always necessarily start right at the very time that I had it on my calendar for, it allowed me, I got that alarm, I got that alert, and so it gave me the reminder I needed to then get myself moving. Shortly after I got home, and then I would spend some time long before I called it my studio, in the dining room when my sewing machine was on the table, and I'd sew for a little while, and I'd keep an eye on the clock, and if it was my turn to cook dinner, I'd stop when it was time for me to start dinner, and I would go from there. And that structure helped me to really get going, and what I found is that the more I was able to adhere to that, the more time I was able to spend doing my creative thing. So then as I started to make more and more pieces, I realized that I also kind of wanted to keep track of what I was making. And so I set myself up a database, and I started taking pictures, and I started sharing all that on the internet. And in order to remember, what I found in the early days is was just sort of winging that as well. And so then I realized, oh wait, if I write down like a to-do list or a project list with all the steps that I take to complete a project, that'll help me remember and I won't forget anything important. And I actually still have that list today for these textured fiber paintings. It's got about 20 something steps on it. The stitching step is one that just kind of keeps repeating on my to-do list until I'm done stitching. But I also took that list and I added it to my task manager, so I don't forget. So I don't have to. I'm a big fan of writing things down so I don't forget them, and because it allows it to clear out of my head. There's a productivity philosophy called Getting Things Done by a gentleman named David Allen, and the whole principle of it is to get everything that you think you need to do or you want to do, whether it's something that needs to happen now or something that's just a someday wish, like someday I'd like to go to Belgium and drink really yummy Belgian beer from the Trappist monks. But you take these things, and so that's on my someday list. But you take these things out of your head and you create this functioning sort of massive to-do list or project list that you're categorizing into, projects, or he's got certain headers, I use my own. But the principle of it is that you get these things out of your head. And so that's what I did to create my art, is I created my process. And I wrote down, these are the steps to my process, and it allows me to, when it's time to start a piece, I know exactly what I need to do first. Now at this point I've made enough of them that that list is probably pretty well stuck in my head. I probably really don't need to be looking at it every time I do a project, but I still use it because it allows me to not have to think about it. And so again, that structure and that system allows me to free up my mind to be more creative. And as I've done that, my designs have gotten more vibrant, they've gotten more interesting, they have really expanded in terms of like intuitive creation, if that's a term. If not, I just made it up, whatever. But yeah, it's something that I just started doing to kind of keep myself motivated. And I just messed that up. I just lost my thought, guys. Sorry, whoever's watching, I apologize. I just lost my thought as I tweaked a little thread there. Anyway, what I was saying is that the more I followed my systems, the greater my creativity became. I think was really the point I was trying to make. So, because again, it's like if you can get it out of your head and you can free yourself up so you don't have to think about it, it allows you to be more creative. And this tactic can be applied to your work. It can be applied to your household routine. I think a lot of times we find ourselves, we tell like so many of us sit there and say there's just not enough time. We think a lot about the fact that we don't have enough time to do all the things we want to do. Maybe not right now during the pandemic. Maybe we have more time on our hands than we're used to. But when pre-pandemic and potentially even post-pandemic, we may all go back to this feeling of there's just not enough time to accomplish all the things that I want to accomplish in a given day. And I really do believe that a lot of that comes because we sit there and we store all the stuff in our heads. And this gentleman, David Allen, with the Getting Things Done process, has a similar, that's kind of the whole point of his process, is you get it in, you get it out of your head. And when you can do that, when you can sort of do the brain dump and not have to worry about what you want to do next, it frees your mind up. And you can start designing solutions, and you can start solving problems, and you can manage crises, and the project that you're working on at the office becomes a whole lot easier to do because you don't have 20 billion other things in your head floating around distracting you. It's sort of like social media, right? Our brains are like social media on steroids, just with the constant feed of information that's constantly going on, because our thoughts never stop. I don't remember the stat, but it's something like we think, some hundreds of thousands or millions of thoughts per day. It's some really insanely high number, kind of surprising number, that how many different thoughts go through our brains every day. And So there's a lot of clutter in your head, right? And so it's just like social media. Like there's so much going on as you scroll through that feed. Like look at all this stuff and everything. When your brain's that way. When you're scrolling social media, you're not really thinking about much of anything. You're popping up with comparison situations where you're comparing yourself to somebody else, which please don't ever do. I know it's easier to say it than it is to put into practice, but please don't ever compare yourself to anybody else. But so you're on social media, you're scrolling through, it's distracting you from whatever else. The next thing you know, you've lost an hour because you spent it on Facebook playing, doing quizzes and looking at pictures of funny cat videos or cute cat videos and cute puppy videos and whatnot. And your brain is the same way. With all the thoughts going through your heads, the more you can actually systemize things and make them more routine for yourself, the easier it becomes to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. Because again, you don't have to worry about all the bullshit that's floating through your head. You've taken it out of your brain and you've put it on paper. You've put it in some sort of other system. You've stored it in Evernote. You've put it in Todoist. You got a journal. You use a paper diary. You use something like that, and you get all this the crap out of your head. And so then, whether you're working on something that you want to work on to grow your own creativity, or you're at work trying to, working on whatever it is that your responsibilities are, your brain is free to do them. Your work performance improves when you start putting systems and routines into place, and you become more creative at work. So this is why I'm a huge advocate for systems and routines. And like I said, in my experience, it worked really well for me. I was able to establish a routine so that I was able to establish and put a system in place so that I could come home from a day of work, even when I was tired, even when I was exhausted, even when I didn't really want to, and I could say, and the alarm would go off, or my phone would alert, hey, it's time, it's creating time, it's sewing time, and I would 9 times out of 10, I'd say, all right, you know what, this is important to me, I'll go do it. My alarm went off, I get to go do this, and I always felt better afterwards. And, I was always, I guess, relieved. It was this beautiful, beautiful way to transition into being home again after the workday. And again, that system I put in place allowed me to do so. I have so many systems for so many different things, for tracking my art, for managing my to-do list and my project list, for managing my clients. I'm an absolute advocate for systems and processes in place. And just sort of as a tie-in to that, I think that when you can put these things into place, not only does it allow you more time to be creative because you've removed the clutter from your brain that can get in the way, but it also allows you, the systems and structure are a form of self-care. Creativity is a form of self-care. The physical act of doing the creating, like I'm doing right now, and I'm talking to you, so of course it's a little different today, but I'm doing something physical, and so there's a portion of my brain that's focused on what I'm doing, and it knows I'm stitching away. And if I wasn't speaking here on the Facebook, with you guys here in Open Studio, my brain would just quietly be, thoughts would be floating by, be drifting by. And what I have found through the years is that I have ended up solving a number of issues, right? I haven't sat down at the sewing machine to solve a problem or to design a solution or to come to some sort of conclusion about things. That's not why I do it. But what I have found is that that's been a result. Is that something will come into my mind, or something that maybe has been bothering me, or has been on, again, sort of a topic that I've considered, and I'll sit down here and I won't really consciously even engage with it, but the next thing I know is it's floating through my brain, and my brain is free to do what it needs to do to come up with the solution, because I have distracted the rest of me, that the piece of myself, the piece of my brain that can get in the way and stop me from doing things. It's distracted doing this. So it allows me to then, like I said, come up with solutions to other things, or to come, or to come up with really great ideas for other things. I've thought of ideas for other pieces of art when I've been sewing, because there's a piece of my brain that's free to just be and do what it's designed to do, which is solve problems, create solutions, and create, period. So, I hope that made sense today. I don't know. I don't ever come to these things with a script. I come with a sort of just a general idea of what I want to talk about, and to sew and kind of show you while I'm sewing. And I know it's hard to see. You can't really see what I'm doing, and my hand's probably in the way a little bit. But I don't know. We all watch Bob Ross. We still watch Bob Ross on PBS when we find him, don't we? And find him just so much fun to watch. He's so soothing that I kind of hope. I don't know how much he planned. I mean, I suppose he planned his paintings. I'm not really sure. I just think of me as like the Bob Ross of the sewing machine. I'm not making happy little trees, but I'm just sort of sharing some thoughts while I sew, and eventually I'll share the finished product. Today I will show you all when I'm stitching myself into a corner again here, so I'll show you what I mean when I remove it. I'll hold it up to the screen so you can just see what I'm talking about. Hopefully it'll be visible, but we'll find out. I guess we're gonna find out. Let's see here, a little bit more. Almost there. One more stitch. So what I want to show you, like what I'm talking about here, is the. I don't know if you can get it in the camera. I'll take my glass off. But so in the stitching, as I'm going around these pieces, and I keep working my way around the green, sort of in this outline shape, eventually I run into something and I can't, and I create a corner. And so like here, there's no stitching here because I stitched enough that I basically, again, I ended up isolating this section. So I still have to go back and finish this section, but the rest of it, like I said, I stitched myself into a corner. So I stop and I pull the thread, pull the thing out of the machine and readjust my thread and go to town and go do the rest of it. So anyway, I will finish that up as we get off, I think as we finish up today. But for now, let's just call it, I think we'll call Open Studio done for today. I want to thank anyone who was watching. I didn't see any names pop up, so I don't know if anybody did come hang out with me or not, but hopefully you'll see it later. And because it will stay on Facebook. And if you're ever interested in sort of going back and watching these again, or you'd like to follow along, I do store them over on my YouTube channel. So go look for you under YouTube, look for my name, Hilary Clark. And when you see a symbol that's a triscale, it's basically a triangular shape. It's very colorful thing. It's got a couple loops. I can't draw it, so I can't. But anyway, look for a triangle shape that has some curves in the middle of it. Celtic symbol, triscale. And that's my logo. So look for that with the name Hilary Clark, and you will find my videos. So you'll find these Open Studios, and you'll find my weekly videos that I post over on my blog and send out to my mailing list. So if you're interested in being on my mailing list to get those, you just need to go over to hilaryclark.com, and you can sign up on my mailing list over there. So, but like I said, YouTube is available, Hilary Clark, website, hilaryclark.com, or here on Facebook. Hang out with me here. All right. I hope everyone has a really wonderful Memorial Day weekend. I know we can't really go out and do much of anything. It's not our usual thing, and in many instances, many cases, we really can't even visit with family like maybe we have in the past. But I do hope that everyone has a really safe, happy, and healthy Memorial Day. Please remember to thank those who served and fought and died for us so that we have the freedoms that we have today to have things like Facebook and Open Studios and barbecues and beer and hot dogs and apple pie and all the wonderfulness that it means to be alive. Thanks for joining me again, and we will see you next week on Wednesday, not on Monday. We're going to take the holiday off, but we'll see you next Wednesday here on Facebook for another Open Studio with me. Take care. Bye-bye.